Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Integrating Data Science and Effective Lesson Planning with Cambridge Science, presented today by Dr. Simon Crook and our lead science publisher, Sarah Fabris. My name is Caroline Poole and I'm the New South Wales State Sales Manager based here in Sydney. Before we get started, in the spirit of reconciliation, Cambridge University Press and Assessment acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Our presenter today, Dr. Simon Crook, is series consultant for the new edition of Cambridge Science for the New South Wales Syllabus, Stages 4 and 5. Simon is an experienced science educator and honorary associate at the School of Physics, the University of Sydney. In 2015, Simon founded Crooked Science, a science education consultancy working with schools from all sectors K-12 around professional development of teachers and working in situ and online with students. Today, Simon will be discussing the new New South Wales syllabus and how Cambridge Science, second edition, supports the teaching of data science in the classroom, as well as tools for effective lesson planning for teachers. Following Simon's presentation, there will be a short video demonstration of the Science Interactive platform. There will also be an opportunity throughout the webinar to submit questions that Simon and our lead science publisher, Sarah, will address. But if we do run out of time for all the questions, we will definitely get back to you at a later time. So with that, I will now hand over to Simon to get started. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be with you again. So if you missed our previous webinar, we provided an overview about the changes in the new syllabus, and Cambridge have kind of spliced that hour-long webinar into a series of vignettes which you can access via the Cambridge YouTube channel, and they're about 5 minutes long each, where we actually looked at the content and the focus areas. We touched on the data science. We're going to be looking a bit more in detail today on that. Also the depth studies and working scientifically, and I think there's a few more there as well. And these, sorry, this afternoon might well end up on YouTube as well, I'm guessing there. So just going over again in terms of data science as presented in the new syllabus, but also the options that are available. There are some misunderstandings there, and I think this is it's quite pertinent to highlight those as we move forwards. And then today is very much, as Caroline was saying, looking at the resources that Cambridge has to offer, the whole suite of resources that Cambridge has to offer, and some of the specifics there around data science, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's resources for depth studies. And then we're actually looking at some of the various media that, as teachers and students, you'll be able to access the resources, and a variety of examples, then obviously leading into the video demonstration. Okay, so as was previously mentioned, we've got 16 terms in years 7 to 10. We've got 16 focus areas as opposed to modules, just in terms of the new terminology. And the way it's presented, data science is taught at the end of each stage, data science 1 and data science 2. It's presented to be taught in that kind of like term 4 for years 8 and 10. I think most people will do that first time around just because it will be easier that way, but you don't have to. So that's an important thing. I mean, not least because there's different schools with maybe stage classes, various other perhaps STEM initiatives, but also a lot of people may want to authentically integrate data science earlier on within a stage so the students can apply the skills later. And data is mentioned at regular points within the content. So you do have some flexibility there. Personally, I'd recommend a bit of a hybrid where you might do some aspects as standalones perhaps in the timings as presented, but then integrate other aspects elsewhere. We'll have a look at some of the nitty-gritty shortly. But if you are looking to integrate either partially or wholly, you will very much need to almost keep a kind of data science scope and sequence. You will need to keep a record that you are basically teaching a term's worth of data science within a stage to demonstrate that you are compliant, because certain authorities and sectors get a bit twitchy when people mention integration, even if they sometimes suggest it themselves, because they don't think that people will fully address things if they say it's just integrated. So just cover yourselves there. And I know that's advice that's been given at some meetings. Data Science 1, we have a few areas. We've got 5 content groups there. I think something like data is perfect as part of a standalone, and perhaps the whole collecting, using and analyzing of data sets. But scientific models and applications of models, this is bread and butter science teaching to be integrated in, or there's opportunities to, so you can either capitalize on prior learning and do this at the end of year 8, or you can integrate it, or a combination. And then for every focus area, we have an in context. So within the actual textbook itself, for the stage 4 textbook, there's an appendix around Data Science 1 that goes through the different content groups with suggestions. You can see there are downloadable resources. As a feature for the Cambridge textbook, there's always the key terms are defined in there. And I was alluding to this before, but in terms of the models, the way the syllabus is written, models are written within the content. So absolutely ripe for integration should you choose with Data Science 1. So for example, observing the universe. So the first module as it's presented in year 7, we've got the whole models of the solar system. And looking at the in context, the whole idea of creating a model, and that's suggested, or not even suggested, it's mandated within the contents that's going to be using either physical or virtual models. So we could create them first to then use them. So perfect opportunities there for integration should you wish. I know many people are perhaps looking to do just the term 4 in the first cycle, and then they'll review how they're working, and then they might do the integration later on. But some people are already planning to integrate from the get-go, and some people have already decided they won't be integrating, they're just doing the term 4. The choices are yours as the professionals, which I think is really important. So then moving into, just as a segue into space science itself, as presented within the textbook, there are STEM activities suggested in all the chapters. So for space science, we have this one at the end in terms of, again, simulating the planets, which then links in with data science. So lots of resources there if you have STEM programs within your school as well. So, we're looking potentially broader than the actual new 7 to 10 science syllabus. Data Science 2 for stage 5. We've got the 4 content groups. Now, again, I think there's some things that really lend themselves for potential standalone and some for integration. So pseudoscience, very much for, it could be as a standalone. And I think, again, that kind of emphasis on the data sets, which would now be large data sets for stage 2, and some quite high-end kind of like data analytics, that could very much be within a standalone. Investigating questions and claims, we're basically talking high-end working scientifically. So that very much could be integrated if you so wished. But there'd be opportunities to do different forms of integration there. You may wish to integrate some of the pseudoscience, but there's flexibility there if you wish. As an example, in terms of integration within the content, so for disease in stage 5, as an example, but in many of the content areas, arguably particularly within stage 5, they talk about the use of data, investigating data, analyzing data. So within context. So it's really, well, it's a very important part of the content. Obviously, analysis and processing of data is part of working scientifically as well. So we'll be doing that anyway. This isn't new in terms of working with data. It's just having a focus area, a term's worth of focus area on data science. That's the new aspect. So it is all into the potential is there for integration, and it is very much embedded. So within the textbook itself and within the online textbook that students will have access to also, and teachers, there are data questions. So we're talking for addressing the data skills within working scientifically. We're talking addressing part of data science as well, and very much relevant to the actual content. So as a natural extension of the learning there. So that is a feature for the Cambridge textbook in every single kind of like chapter and chapter review and the questions. So as you can see, there's a variety of stimuli that are presented, which if we think about, you know, the current HSC papers, just the sheer amount of stimulus, you know, our students are going to be seeing in November. With the Cambridge textbooks, we're very much exposing the students to a variety of stimulus, a variety of data representations for students to develop their data analytic skills. And obviously with a whole variety of questions, with a variety of verbs as well, looking to the future with the HSCs. Another feature, and we kind of saw it early on in terms of the little downloads buttons. There's a whole variety of worksheets within the suite, some of which are dedicated to data analysis. So depending on your style of teaching, depending on your particular class's style of learning or differentiating within the class, there's a whole variety of resources for you to cater as the experts in the room to draw from. Just a very quick little plug. With Crook Science, we've got a Data Science 1 on-demand workshop, and Data Science 2 will be coming out very shortly, so you can check that out on the website. So moving into Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander resources. Now, if you're familiar with the new syllabus, there are a lot of content points pertaining to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander science. And some of them are, I would say, highly accessible just from our teaching experience, but some of them are new for teaching, and some of them are a little bit tricky, potentially, if we're not careful. We could be quite culturally insensitive. So within these textbooks, and I think this has been perhaps the biggest learning curve for all of us who have been involved in preparing the textbooks and proofing and resourcing, has been to actually gather resources, and I'll talk about where we have actually gone to expertise to assist in that shortly. But there were many inclusions in the syllabus, and so within the textbooks and the other resources, obviously, first of all, we address the syllabus inclusions with examples and stimulus. But then we've actually curated a whole load of resources, and this is just a few sheets. I think the documents I saw was, well, you can see it. Chapter 2 takes you to page 3. So it is a substantial document that teachers will have to download. And that's been curated by a Torres Strait Islander woman. And And so a lot of time and investment has gone in gathering resources, authentic resources, high quality resources, but where the permission structure is there to use the resources as well. So definitely a real strength of the full suite. Depth studies are addressed throughout the textbook in terms of there's a variety of experiments, first of all, and obviously with the nature of depth studies within the new syllabus, as we unpacked last time, depth studies can take on many forms. So there are things that might not even be labeled as depth studies or as depth study potential, but obviously may fulfill some of the new criteria as they're presented. But there is an Appendix 2 that actually goes through a guide into depth studies. So this is just one page from that to support teachers and to support students. So again, a lot of resources to download there throughout and to access online. Now, in terms of the presentation of the textbook and just in the whole proofing process, we had a lot of dialogue around this because we have that symmetry of 8, let's say, focus areas in a stage. In theory, that could just be 8 chapters, but obviously the skills are a major part. So we want to be focusing in on working scientifically, which naturally segues into that beginning with particularly the nature of science, along with the practice of science within the whole universe initial module, observing the universe. But something like change, which many people have noted is kind of like 3 almost disparate topics that have been brought together with only change being the common factor, rather than just make an arbitrary change chapter. We have 3 separate chapters there. So some of the chapters are for the full focus area, and some of them are for content groups where appropriate. But nevertheless, everything is covered. So we've got all the resources required for the syllabus and more. Each chapter comes with a chapter map, mind map, concept map, but looking at the logic about how it's also.
Hi everyone, my name's Sarah. I'm so sorry for the interruption. We've just had a bit of internet connection problems with Simon's feed. So we were actually about to start on all the digital resources. So I'll take over from here and then hopefully we can get Simon back before we get to questions at the end. So as Simon was saying, we do have these chapter maps at the start of all of our chapters. They're essentially just to give the students that kind of simplified view of the sequence of the content and make it a little bit clearer in how different topics connect together. We do sometimes, some of our customers say that as teachers, they really like to print these out on a kind of a big A3 piece of paper and actually get their students to annotate them. So there's lots of different ways they do get used, but they are just there as a handy reference as well. So going into a little bit more about the online platform. So you can see here, this is a section from our sample chapter that's now live that Simon was just showing a little bit of earlier today. So you can see the learning outcomes at the start of each section are all displayed in the same way in the interactive textbook. So this is kind of gives you a view of the print book versus the interactive on the right of how all of our content looks. So you can see where the links are there for downloading worksheets, everything like that. And then we also have a whole heap of resources throughout. So for example, we do have summary PowerPoints in the online teaching suite. These are downloadable and editable. We know it's really important for this sort of stuff to be able to be edited for teachers because we know, the longest thing about lesson planning is putting all of this stuff together. So we've tried to kind of kickstart that and put as much of it together as we can for you to try and save a bit of time. And that goes for a lot of the other resources as well. So we do have videos in the interactive textbook for students. These all come with captioning as well. And we do have a selection of videos for practicals as well to offer kind of a walkthrough of the method. So these are offered for those sort of more slightly more technical pracs that require a little bit more a little bit more technique to do. So things like the chemistry ones where they're measuring and using sort of unfamiliar techniques, or in year 7 when they're learning how to use a Bunsen burner. So those videos are also provided and visible to the students in the interactive textbook. So all of our questions, including quick checks in the book, have an EdGen workspace in them. So the workspace allows you to type, you can draw, if one of the questions asks for them to draw a diagram. They can also write something down in their book, take a picture and upload it. You can also you'll see just under the check answer button. So answers can be enabled or disabled by the teacher. So you can decide whether or not students can see the answer and self-assess or not. You can also see that they can flag the question and rate their confidence in how they went responding to it. So if they hit that little flag button that says, let my teacher know I had some trouble with this question, you will get a notification in your teacher account to say that that student has flagged a question, so that you know where they might need a little bit more support. So we also have teacher notes throughout the online teaching suite for any activities. So you'll see a little icon above the box, like you can see in this sample here for a try this. So these are the same activities that are in the book, but in the online teaching suite, you'll see these little icons above them. These can sometimes include suggested responses where it's relevant, but a lot of it's also just tips for teachers. There's some lab tech notes and risk notes as well in the practical teacher notes. Sometimes there's also a bit of sample data or kind of sample responses for different things. So you can see this is an example of the chapter review in the online, in the interactive textbook. So again, you can see those workspaces for the questions. So all of the questions that appear in the print book will have that same workspace. So this is the chapter checklist as well. So we always put all of the learning outcomes throughout the book at the end, collated in a success criteria checklist. So there is a version of this that the students can download that has a little check column at the end so that they can tick things off as they go. Or you can refer to the print book here where it has the linked questions so that they know which questions they need to answer to show that they have met one of the learning goals. So a couple of other things in the interactive textbook, we've got Scorchers, which are competitive timed quizzes for students. These are a really fun option. They offer fairly low level, less challenging questions so that they're a little bit more accessible. But these are timed and students can compete with their class or with their school or with the world, which in this case would be New South Wales. So this is just the dashboard of what it looks like, and I won't go into a lot of detail because Caroline will do a demo of this in a moment as well, but this is just the initial view of what you can see. There's also the tests that can be created. I believe Caroline will cover this, but this is just the page where you can create custom tests from our bank of leveled questions. And data is also a big part of it, actually. So in our teaching suite, we do have fairly comprehensive reporting for different aspects of the different assessments and tasks that you can assign your students. This example you can see here is from the adaptive testing. So this is just 2 separate options of how you can view the reporting of how students have gone on different things. That little line graph on the right you can see is measuring their growth after doing a pre-test versus a post-test on one chapter. So that will show you how much they've improved before and after a lesson or a period of learning, for example, once they've completed a focus area. So our practicals as well. So the practicals, this is a view of a practical skills box in the print book. As I said before, we've got videos included for some of these. We've got teacher notes for all of them, which include answers in some cases. And we also have, so this is that same practical in a downloadable format. So all of these can be downloaded from the online teaching suite in a Word document or a PDF. So you can edit them if you want to sort of remove the procedure and just have them look at some dummy data and write up a report. Or if you do want them to carry out the whole investigation, but you don't want them to sort of focus on any of the discussion questions, you can move all of that around. So it's entirely editable, but you can also just use them as they are. Okay, so just to summarize a lot of that, there's a lot going on in our interactive resources. So we're really excited to be able to finally share some of that with you. This is just a couple of the things in the interactive textbook. So I think we've covered most of them, but it's also worth noting we do have a downloadable PDF version of the textbook. So that is available in both the teacher and the student version. So you can download that to get an offline version if you don't want to use the interactive. And then just quickly, I'll touch on the adaptive testing I mentioned just earlier. So this is a really powerful tool that can be used for differentiation with your students. Again, Caroline will cover it, but the main thing this is showing here is just that there's 3 levels of questions. So students will always be shown that level 2 question, so that medium level question at the start, and then depending on how they answer, they'll be shown an easier question if they answer incorrectly and a harder question if they answer correctly. So that's essentially the backbone of how our adaptive testing works. The students can't see how that's happening in the background. It all happens behind the scenes. And you get that comprehensive reporting I showed earlier to kind of show you exactly where they're sitting in each of the topics. So there'll be sort of 3 levels of questions in every topic. All of those topics are aligned directly to both our book sections and also the curriculum. So you can toggle the view between them when you're looking at that reporting. So that's that reporting by chapter at the moment. So that's the view when you do align it to the chapter. So this is the view, you can toggle that to the curriculum and then see the syllabus points that those separate skills are aligning to. All of this can also be downloaded as well in an Excel spreadsheet or however you need to align with your own, if you've got any other LMS you're using. So that's just a larger view of what we showed before, of showing the growth between the pre and the post test. And course reports as well. So this is the reporting for anything that's not adaptive testing. So all the other parts of the book, you can see the different types of questions down there, and that will give you a breakdown of each of your classes. Task Manager I won't go into because Caroline will show that in her demo. Very excited about this though, and it does make lesson planning much easier. So we're hoping this will be really, really handy for you with the new syllabus. So just to finish up on that, so the online teaching suite, again, just an overview of everything that's included. It is a big list of things. We do try and provide everything you could possibly need. There's a lot of teacher support there, particularly around the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander practices that Simon mentioned earlier. So we do include a curated list. There's also plenty of different types of downloadable tests and assessments that are ready to go and printable. So you don't have to create your own tests or use the interactive if you don't want to. There's lots of different ways that you can access it, and you can kind of pick and choose what you need and when. All right, so we're really excited in conclusion about all of this. There's so much in this resource, but it would be a whole webinar to go through each separate feature. So if you do have more questions, definitely reach out about any of these particular different types of features that we have. But yeah, in the end, yeah, we'll go through a demo that Caroline will show you a little bit more of what that actually looks like in practice. But then we'll go through Q&A a little bit later this afternoon. So if you do have any questions once you've seen that demo, please do let us know. And I think we've got Simon back online for the Q&A, but just on behalf of Simon, this is Simon's details as well. So as Simon mentioned, he's the founder of Crooked Science, which is a science education consultancy. So that's the links there if you do want to get in touch with Simon. If you have questions about our resources or the curriculum for Simon, you can also get in touch with us and our sales reps directly, and we can pass anything on to Simon as needed. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for bearing with us with our difficulties. I think we're all back online and sorted for questions now. So I'm going to hand over to Caroline to do a demo of the digital platform, and then we'll go to questions. Thank you.
So here from the main dashboard of the teaching suite, we can move between different chapters and topics throughout the text. Within the interactive content, you will find a rollover glossary of key terminology. Moving through the content and images as it is in the print book, we have a selection of activities, including the practicals that can be expanded with teacher notes indicated on the left to open up when needed. As we scroll through, you will find some useful widget demonstrations embedded throughout the content for students to explore further. Widgets also have follow-up worksheets that can be printed or completed online. Related videos can also be found throughout the page and revisited any time by students. These are great for visual demonstrations in the classroom as well. We then go up to the menu bar at the top to access auto-marked quizzes, including multiple choice and short answer questions. These questions are for the students to complete and submit to their teacher for instant feedback and reports, and can be attempted independently or assigned specifically by their teacher. Exercise questions from the textbook can also be answered through the platform using Workspace. Students can type in answers, write in answers, or upload images to submit for teacher feedback. Students can also check their answer should you have this turned on for them to view. Let's go back to the menu, and now we can have a look at the chapter review features. Here you will find review questions listed. You'll also have your chapter checklists, which are in line with your outcomes, reflection questions, data questions, and the popular Scorcher feature for 10 quick questions, drill and practice style, for students to attempt to get their name on the leaderboard with their best times. These are multiple choice and delivered to the students in different random order. There's an assessment tool for building your own auto-marked assessments relative to the content with a large selection of carefully graded questions. This feature here allows you as a teacher to hand-pick appropriate leveled questions for students to complete. These can be assigned online to classes or also be able to print them out. Our adaptive testing tool is a bank of pre-done assessments for you to assign with pre-tests and post-tests to gauge students' understanding and growth. These adaptive assessments will deliver questions dependent on student answers. For example, correct answers will be followed by a more challenging question, and then incorrect answers will be followed by an easier question. Once completed, teachers can access insightful reports indicating any gaps in students' knowledge, as well as their growth and understanding. These reports can also be exported. Now let's explore our Task Manager tool. Here you can assign specific tasks for students to complete as homework or in class in an order that you choose. We start by naming the task, then following that we can now select different activities for the students by dragging and dropping them in. For example, here we have selected the textbook content as a first task. From this point we could choose a number of different activities to attempt. For this demonstration, I will now select a quiz as the third task. The quiz, being an auto-marked feature, allows you to set a benchmark to build different pathways dependent on the quiz results. For the students who get under that set score and possibly need some further revision, we can set them things like a widget to review or perhaps a video to watch back. For students who get over that set score, we can then assign them slightly more challenging tasks to extend them further. We can also include assessments that we have actually built in our teaching suite. Once you've decided on what to assign for your students, we can then assign that out to the class or to an individual to attempt, and you will have the ability to track their progress as the teacher. Lastly, the teacher resources will be available here from this tab. Here you will find all your downloadable material, including worksheets, PowerPoint presentations, all your teaching programs and other planning documents will also sit here. You will find a large selection of teacher support in correspondence with your textbooks. The support button at the bottom right will give you the option of asking a question with support videos and articles to help. The digital team as well as the sales team will also be happy to help with any queries, as well as offer an in-school demonstration of the platform.
Thanks so much, Caroline, for going through that in a bit more detail. The online platform is definitely something that we could spend all night talking about. Definitely good to have that, just a general demo of what that looks like in the platform. If you do want to have a bit more of a demo as well in person, our sales reps would definitely be very happy to come out and show you at your school, or do a faculty demonstration if you prefer, so do get in touch. All right, so we're going to go into some questions. We've had a couple come through in the chat. If you do have any questions that you haven't put in the chat already, please put them in. So we do have one question here from Matthew, just asking if there were if the presenter mentioned that there were slideshows available that align with the textbook that can be used by teachers. So yes, Matthew, so thanks for your question. So those PowerPoints we mentioned, they are essentially a summary of the chapter, and they are available for all of the chapters. So it provides all of the learning outcomes for each section and also any relevant diagrams, everything like that, and otherwise is just a summary of that whole chapter. So it can be used to project in class or for planning. So there was a question here about the syllabus for you, Simon. So someone's just asked that it looks like the inquiry questions have been removed, and what does that mean?
No, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, look, this is an interesting point. So for some people, they think it's just a matter of semantics, that inquiry questions have been just relabeled as content groups. And, you know, that is one way of looking at it. I won't go into the reasons why they've changed the terminology. It's a bit bemusing. But what I would say is, I know for a lot of teachers, inquiry questions really work well at the moment in terms of setting up a topic and couching it within an inquiry question. And I know, say, particularly within stage 6, a lot of teachers present the inquiry questions for the topic to students, but then ultimately ask them to answer that inquiry question for 5 marks. Can they prepare an answer there? If that's something you don't already do, you may decide to do that. So just, sorry, very quickly to your point there, Sarah, I would say if you currently use inquiry questions to actually present it from the point of view of a question that you want students to be thinking about and ultimately to be able to answer by the end, engineer them back in. You know, that's just, if it's pedagogy that works for you now, you work it back in, even if it's disappeared from the print of the syllabus.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Simon. Okay, what else did we have? So there was one more relating to the platform. So Matthew's asking about I believe that question's about Task Manager and assigning tasks. So can this be saved as a template to distribute to all teachers to use with their classes? So to an extent, yes, you can do that. So you can create a set task or lesson and then save the template. That template can then be shared with teachers. The extent to who you can share that with and how widely just depends on how your accounts are set up. So sometimes you may just want to have teachers added to a class that you're using so that they can see certain things. But you can share that generally with your whole faculty if you're all on the system. So obviously anyone you want to share that with would need to have their own subscription of the teaching suite, but that's something that would be organised if you are book listing and using the resource as a whole. Okay, so there's a question about planning documents for data science. So someone's asking if there's planning documents provided for teaching data science separately. Yeah, so I guess that was one of the things that Simon, that you covered at the start of the webinar was that you can teach data science separately or integrate it within all of the other focus areas. So in line with that, the way that we've set up our planning resources for teachers is that we have included a separate teaching program for the data science focus area if you want to teach that as a separate group. So that sets out your scope and sequence, which is based on the NSW scope and sequence, and pulls all of the integrated aspects of data from different chapters of our resource and puts that in one kind of spread for you. We do also have it included in teaching programs for all of the other chapters so that you can plan out how you would integrate it and still have your timestamps through there. I think that was one of the key challenges Simon's already mentioned, is that if you are integrating data science, you do need to kind of log how many hours you're spending on it, for example, so you can do that with the planning documents that we'll provide. That's all available as downloadable Word documents in our online teaching suite so that you can download these, edit them, and get them to suit your format as you need to. And then we also provide a separate mapping grid, which will show all of the syllabus points as a whole and lists all of the mapping areas of where they're covered in our resources, whether it's a specific activity, a section of the chapter, or a specific downloadable resource like a worksheet. That'll all be listed and provided there for you. So that's all provided. It's perhaps a little bit more than what you'll need, but that's what we aim for, to make sure that we've kind of covered off all of the different ways you would want to teach it. Okay, so I think that was that looks like that was all the planning questions. So we had one question here about the practicals. So I think this has come through just after we showed the editable format of the practicals and the teacher notes. Someone's asked if they're compatible with Risk Assess. So our practicals are not directly in Risk Assess. we do offer risk assessments as a separate downloadable file. So in the teaching suite, you will find not just the downloadable version of the practical itself, but there'll also be a downloadable Word document for each one with a risk assessment already done. So that will list your hazardous chemicals, disposal requirements, everything like that. This is more from a school perspective, not so much for students to kind of learn how to write a risk assessment, because we do include that in some of the pracs as well as a skill. So this is more just for that liability aspect of the schools having to complete their risk assessments. We do complete them as they are. If you're using Risk Assess, alternatively, you can also download our practicals and upload them and use them in Risk Assess that way. So it just depends on what suits your school and what process you're already following. We pretty much cater to all of that. So yeah, we have found that people like using the downloadable risk assessments because they can kind of just remove anything that's not relevant to them and kind of copy and paste it into their own school template. So you can do that as well if you need to have your signature down the bottom and that sort of thing. It works with all of that. Okay, so we just had a question around whether or not we provide support for the digital platform. I presume that's coming from a teacher perspective, and it's a great question. We've just thrown a heap of features at you this afternoon. So yeah, it is might be a little bit of a learning curve for some people who've never seen it before. I will reiterate that this platform is the same platform that our maths resources are hosted on. So if you've ever used Cambridge Hot Maths, this is the exact same platform that's used for our science and humanities resources, just different content in it. So the way that the workspaces work, the way that you can assign tasks, the reporting, all of that will be familiar to anyone who is also a maths teacher that's used our resources. If you haven't used it before and you are looking for support, rest assured that our sales team does provide ongoing PD support for teachers and whole faculties where it's needed. So if you were to book list this resource and you would like them to come in and kind of show either on a one-on-one or for a whole faculty, and, stepping through how to set up your classes and all of that sort of stuff, we can definitely provide support around that towards the end of the year or early next year, whenever it suits. So do reach out to the sales reps of your local one or to Caroline if you're not sure, and they can certainly help you with that. Okay, so we just have, I think that's all the questions. I've got one that's just come through from Shakir of how can we get access to a free sample textbook? Yeah, great question. So if you do go to the landing page, I think the link might be on the last slide that Caroline has. Otherwise, we'll share it with you all after the webinar. So this webinar is recorded and you will receive an email with the recording. That will include links to how you can find all the sample textbooks. So on our landing page at the moment, if I just have a quick look at it now, we've got sample pages online for all of stage 4 and stage 5. So you can have a look at it there. There's also an annotated sample chapter that will take you through all of the samples of the print resource. And lastly, there's a couple of sample teaching programs there, so you can see how all of that content is sequenced in the new syllabus with our new resources. And that's also where you can access the interactive sample. So that chapter 10 atomic structure that Simon showed a little bit of earlier today, you can access that yourself and have a bit of a look around at the main content that's in there as well. All right, how are we going for time? So I think we've just about run out of time for questions this afternoon. If there's any that we haven't answered, we will get in contact with you directly. And if you do have any questions after this that we didn't get time to show and to answer, then please do send a follow-up email and get in touch with Caroline and the sales reps, and they can help you out from there as well. Thanks so much, everyone. So I might hand over to Caroline to finish up.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Simon and Sarah, and apologies for the little technical hiccup there, but we got there in the end and got through everything. So thank you for your patience with that. So the new Cambridge Science resources will all be available this term. Like Sarah just mentioned, there are samples up online, but all the sales reps in New South Wales currently have samples that we can share with you. So if you'd like to see a print version of those samples, by all means, reach out. We can come out to the school, run through it with you and leave those samples with you. When you're purchasing these resources, you do have a few options. So of course we have a print book option. With that print book comes the interactive for the students. So they will have access to that platform, as well as a digital-only platform, option is also available. So for schools who aren't necessarily using print books, it can be online only. And then the Teacher Suite access, as Sarah mentioned, this is offered to the teachers, and this is a complementary resource for the faculty when you are implementing the Cambridge text into the school. So on the final slide there, you will see the details of the New South Wales sales team. Like I said, we're more than happy to meet with you, discuss the resources. We can chat about the pricing, availability, and also demonstrate the platform. Pricing, we can chat with you about, but also we also recommend to talk to your preferred bookseller as well, because they can definitely give you some idea on pricing for that as well. So yeah, please reach out to any one of us and we'll be happy to help. And I think that is about it. So thank you to Simon and Sarah. Your presentations were very informative today. And I hope everyone enjoyed that webinar, and thank you very much for joining. So on behalf of the team at Cambridge, have a lovely night and goodbye. Thank you.